from the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast.
Coming up today on AgDay, as cattle supplies grow, it's domestic demand that needs to keep up, and that starts this week.
As we work through Thanksgiving and Christmas, these holidays will be very important.
Better cattle prices are helping balance sheets, but are better than expected yields changing the grain storyline this year.
As the saying goes, history doesn't repeat itself, but it sure does rhyme.
In agribusiness, economists say it's not the 1980s, but some analysts disagree.
I do think in commodity there's a very dominant 30-year cycle.
And the president serves up demand for U.S. beef.
AgDay, presented by the Chevy Silverado. High-strength steel for high-strength dependability.
Good morning, I'm Tyne Morgan in for Clinton Griffiths. As the livestock sector of agriculture continues to expand, the latest cattle on feed report showing no signs of a slowdown for U.S. cattle herd. According to USDA, the total number of cattle on feed for slaughter reached 11.3 million head. That's as of November 1st. That's 6% above last year. Placements in feedlots jumped 10%, now at 2.39 million head. And marketings rose 6% compared to the same time last year at 1.80 million head. Scott Dreyer of Blue Reef Agri-Marketing says as long as the markets can keep up with placement numbers, the balancing act between supply and demand should continue.
So as we look out from now through the end of April, I think we can maintain the balance. Right now, we've got to get through some holiday demand. It's been good. Hopefully we can clean off some shelves at the retailers as we work through Thanksgiving and Christmas. These holidays will be very important. If we can have good retail demand and continue on this as we work into the first of the year, I think we're going to be fine.
Dreyer says at some point supply will outpace demand, but he doesn't think the market is there yet. The protein sector has been able to withstand the growing numbers. Cattle prices are proof of that. And it's those prices helping the net farm income picture this year. USDA, along with some economists, are projecting net farm income to increase this year for the first time in 4 years. But the economic headwinds in agriculture are still too much for some producers to withstand, and that's creating begging concerns. As grain comes crashing in this fall, the yield story is turning out to be very similar to 2016.
As the saying goes, history doesn't repeat itself, but it sure does rhyme. This year rhymes a lot with what we experienced last year.
It's very much deja vu all over again. We're standing here again saying yields are better than expected.
But as protein prices pick up, it's changing USDA's outlook on net farm income.
So 16 may have been an inflection point for us. 17, we're starting to see it pick up a little bit. Now, it's not all operators are going to tell you that story.
On the grain side, some farmers are riding out the turbulence better than others.
The producers that are faring the best are the ones that are doing a good job in understanding their break-evens. And they're the ones that are looking, even in these times where rent is still higher than it should be, they're looking at realistically, is it time to not farm some land because it's not contributing to the well-being of the operation, it's serving as a drain on cash.
Hoskins says in southern Illinois and Indiana, there are 4 farm auctions over the next month, a sign that shows the financial stress that's consuming farms today.
And I would say that while it is not a widespread wheels are coming off, I think there are definitely some producers out there that through discussions with their bankers, through discussions with their accountants, that are recognizing they've built some good equity and maybe it is time to exit the production marketplace.
While it's not the 1980s, the cycle of depressed commodity prices is something agriculture just can't break.
Nobody wants to live in this environment forever, so we've got to find some way to unlock some of these demand factors to move more of our grains out.
Agriculture is hopeful the strength behind both the U.S. economy and economies around the globe will spill over into U.S. ag.
Well, I think we're going to have to sustain a few more years of the current economics. I think this year and 19, there's probably not enough to move the needle. There's not going to be enough demand over the next 2 years to eat up all the supplies. We have record stocks for both corn, soybeans, and wheat. So it's going to take a few more years to churn that out.
For farmers and ranchers looking at a dire situation, just trying to survive, bankers like Hoskins say don't panic.
First and foremost, look at each piece of land that you operate. Determine if it is adding to or detracting from your overall cash flow. Perhaps you can decrease in size and become more profitable by doing that.
While the situation may be ripe for some farmers to walk away, others will find a way to survive through grit and the will to endure.
It's 2018 that one major ag company has its sights on, trying to stop a possible dicamba ban as farmers are already purchasing products for the 2018 growing season. Monsanto Company is asking an Arkansas judge to stop the state's planned ban on dicamba. Monsanto Company, who is the manufacturer of Xtend, is asking a Pulaski County judge to strike down the rule, which was approved by State Plant Board earlier this month. The new rule would stop farmers from using dicamba from April 16th through October 31st. The rule isn't final as it still needs to go before a legislative panel next month. But Monsanto says action needs to be taken now as farmers are already buying chemicals for next year. The Missouri Department of Agriculture is putting more restrictions on dicamba for the 2018 growing season. The department issuing a special local needs label for BASF's Ingenia product. The product can now only be applied by certified applicators with special training in the state, and it can't be applied before 7:30 a.m. or later than 5:30 p.m. There are also new cutoff dates for the herbicide. But it's state restrictions like this that farmers in other areas are also watching.
Several friends I've talked to, they said they're not against the technology, but they said they're feeling like they're going to have to adopt and go to Xtend beans just to alleviate the possibility of getting drift from neighbors for next year.
Now, there are currently no restrictions to the label in South Dakota. However, the South Dakota Department of Agriculture is working on the 2018 label requirements for the state. The 2017 label was approved for 1 year, and that expires at the end of December. Well, harvest is really dragging on for some this year, and that means even with Thanksgiving just days away, many are still in the field trying to wrap up. Mike Hoffman has an update in this morning's crop comments. Mike?
Good morning, Tyne. Most fields are now bare in northern Indiana, but for those still standing, a weekend rain slowed them down even further. This was a common sight in that part of the state Saturday as heavy rains puddled in fields. Ditches and creeks were full as well. And here's one you don't see every day. David Hansen in Missouri Valley, Iowa, climbed into his machinery and saw a raccoon waiting for him to harvest. David says harvest is going slow in his area. The crops are wet and the fields are muddy as well. David says he hopes to finish up, though, on corn this week. However, those yields are disappointing. Now, taking a look at the weather map today, you can see a system moving through the upper Midwest with a lot of cold air behind it, but a couple of areas of low pressure in the Gulf. We'll have to watch those and that big storm off the west coast. My forecast coming up, but first here are some hometown temps.
Farm Journal On Air is the go-to app for American agriculture. AgDay, AgriTalk, U.S. Farm Report, and more. 24/7 access to all of your favorite shows, TV and radio. In your hands, on demand. Farm Journal On Air. Download the app today.
Bankers and economists say the current economic times are not a 1980s flashback, but some grain analysts disagree. That's next in Agribusiness. Plus, look at the economics of the dairy sector, including brand new milk production numbers. And elaborate meals weren't always on the menu when President Trump visited Japan. There was something all-American, and that humble burger is really catching on.
AgDay, brought to you by new Delaro fungicide for corn and soybeans. Achieve personal best yields. AgDay, brought to you by Alivo Seed Treatment from Bayer. Protect your soybeans from SDS and nematodes this season.
Well, Tyson Foods is expanding its business footprint in Tennessee. The company says it will build a new chicken production complex in Gibson County. That's about 85 miles northeast of Memphis. It's a $300 million project that's expected to create 1,500 jobs once the plant is operational. It will produce prepackaged trays of fresh chicken. A Tyson spokesman says this project does not replace the company's effort to build facilities in other states like in Kansas, which lost community support in Leavenworth County. Well, earlier in the show, we talked to an ag banker who says while times are tight, it's not the 1980s, but not all analysts agree. Clinton Griffiths joins us now from the Agribusiness Desk.
Dan Huber, the Huber Report, our guest here at the Agribusiness Desk today. Dan, over the last week or so, we've heard quite a few people say we're in the 80s, or we could be headed to the 80s, and they're comparing the cycle that we're in to back then, which was, as we all know, a pretty rough time for farmers.
Absolutely.
What do you think?
You know, in fact, that's been a theme we've been using for some time. That I do think in commodity there's a very dominant 30-year cycle.
Okay.
And you're granted it's never precise. It's not exactly 30 years to the date. But if you go back into that mid to the latter part of the 1980s, of course, a much different farm program at the time. But I mean, really, you farmed for the program. Mm-hmm. And today, we kind of farm for the insurance program. We adjust our planning to what the prices tell us they are in the spring. And really, realistically, with a lot of people, it is the insurance program that's going to keep things afloat here this year. So, and between that and the ARC and the PLC. Now, we can't say when that's going to change, but I think the best correlation is that when you go back to that period, 1985, 1986, 1987, it just couldn't sound any worse. I mean, things were never going to get better. We had burdensome supplies of grain in the carryout. We just kept expanding year after year. So this is not unprecedented to have 3 to 4 years in a row of really declining prices, but all it really took was a small, right now it seems like you could say small weather snafu in 1988, and we turned that picture around dramatically. And I think something we even tend to forget, 2012 is in a lot of people's memory yet. Big years, $8 corn, right. $20 beans.
Wasn't that long ago.
No, that was only a 5% reduction in world production.
Interesting.
So when you look at how we have continually escalated the demand, we've raised the bar on how much we have to have out there, any disruption in that supply side, and we've got a whole new ballgame out there.
Well, I like your fresh perspective.
There we go.
I like the cut of your jib, Dan. Thank you so much for being here. We'll be back with more AgDay in just a minute.
For a free trial of Dan's newsletter, visit thehuberreport.com or call toll-free at 888-926-0985. AgDay, brought to you by Alivo Seed Treatment from Bayer. Protect your soybeans from SDS and nematodes this season.
Welcome back this Thanksgiving week. Well, we're looking at the forecast for Tuesday, but I know some of our viewers, Mike, are getting ready to hit the road and want to know if there will be any delays.
There's not going to be a lot through the middle of the country. We have the big storm coming in out west, but other than that, not a lot of travel issues. But we do have a pretty strong cold front moving southward through the middle of the country. It's going to bring cold air, but you'll notice very little moisture along it. I think these areas of low pressure kind of keeping that Gulf moisture at bay in this situation. Heading through the day today, you can see that cold front moving quickly toward the south and east. A few showers start to develop north of the Ohio River with the cold front, but that's about it. Big time rains and mountain snows coming in out west with that system there. We're also going to have a secondary little piece of that kind of come eastward, as you'll notice, tonight and during the day tomorrow. First area of low pressure out of the Gulf moves on up the east coast. It'll combine with a cold front, but most of the effects with that are offshore. Second one will eventually come across Florida as well. So this is going to be a fairly wet period for Florida over a 3-day period here. Taking a look at tomorrow, you can see how high pressure continues to build through the central Mississippi Valley. A few snow showers with that area of low pressure up along the Canadian border, and the big storm continues to hit the west coast, especially northern portions of the west coast, Oregon and Washington. Taking a look at precipitation estimates over the past 24 hours, not a lot, as you can see there, except you get into the Pacific Northwest, Northern California northward into the northern Rockies. Adding in the next 36 hours, you'll notice our computer model doesn't put down a whole lot. It does in the state of Florida. At least some areas might get an inch or two, but it does put down a lot in the Pacific Northwest, like we've been saying. Snowfall past 24 hours, mostly north of the border or in northern portions of the Rockies. Adding in the next 36 hours, we'll have a little bit of lake effect, but not much with this cold air. And also you'll notice some more snow for the northern portions of the Rockies. High temperatures today, 20s and 30s up along the Canadian border, 50s and 60s by the time you get to the Gulf Coast, so kind of on the cool side even for you folks. You can see lows tomorrow morning, lots of 20s across the Corn Belt into the eastern portions of the Ohio Valley, and even 40s and 50s down into Mississippi and Alabama. And so some pretty chilly air for this time of the year, and that continues tomorrow. There's the jet stream. You'll see multiple troughs kind of moving through the Great Lakes to the northeast. Little pieces of energy just keep bringing in the cold air, it looks like, and that's a pretty cold shot of air for the Great Lakes in the northeast for this weekend into early next week, and then a little bit of a warming trend for the Plains states by Tuesday of next week. That's a look across the country. Now let's take a look at some local forecasts. We head to Spokane, Washington. First of all, cloudy with times of rain, high temperature of 47. Wichita, Kansas, partly sunny and turning chillier, high of 58 and falling. And in Lynchburg, Virginia, partly sunny skies on the mild side, high temperature around 58.
Thanks, Mike. Here's a programming note. We will not have a regular episode of Ag Day on Thursday. Instead, we will celebrate Thanksgiving with a special program called Harvest of Thanks. It's been such a tough year between weather challenges and economic setbacks, yet we still have many reasons to be thankful. We hope your family and friends can gather to watch our annual tribute to America's farmers and ranchers. Harvest of Thanks, Thursday on Ag Day. Well, next in our dairy report, the latest milk production figures, plus a glance at dairy exports. And President Trump's appetite for American food is having a leftover effect in Japan.
Ag Day, brought to you by Liberty Herbicide, the simply better solution for superior weed control and a stronger yield. The Dairy Report on Ag Day is brought to you by QLF. For 40 years, QLF has been proud to support American farmers that feed the world.
In our dairy report, new milk production numbers are out Monday, giving the industry a fresh taste of supplies as milk production so far this year has continued to grow. According to the Ag Department's monthly milk production report, dairy cows in the top 23 states pumped out 16.7 billion pounds. That's an increase of 1.5% from a year ago. Now, per cow production is up 13 pounds from October 2016. California is the clear leader in milk production, but it declined 1.5%. Wisconsin is up about 2%. Scott Brown, an economist for the University of Missouri, says despite growing supplies, demand has kept up.
When you look at all of agriculture today, especially meat and dairy products, demand has been pulling us despite what have been very large supplies. That could continue. I just worry when you look at dairy, you're just balanced on the head of a pin. Very small changes in supply or demand give us some pretty large changes in prices.
Well, one piece of that demand puzzle that could help prices is exports. The Ag Department reported last week that U.S. dairy exports grew 17% during the last fiscal year. Dairy exports totaled $5.3 billion. Exports of U.S. dairy, beef, and pork helped push the overall ag export picture to its third highest level on record. Fiscal year 2017 exports reached more than $140 billion. Dairy leaders like former Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack say it's export growth that needs to continue in order to keep pace with these growing supplies.
You know, the reality is since 2003, nearly 50% of all the new milk that's been produced by our producers has had to go into the export market. And without that, we would have had a serious problem in dairy. So I think it's fair to say while we are going to focus on domestic consumption and we're going to do our very level best, I think it's also fair to say that the chances are very good that we won't be able, just with domestic consumption alone, to be able to deal with the increased production. So we're going to have to increase exports. And at US DEC, we've basically committed to trying to get to the next 5%. 20% of exports, 20% of the volume, and increasing value as well. So there's going to be an aggressive effort.
Mexico continues to be the largest buyer of U.S. dairy products. Well, Japan is importing more and more U.S. beef, and after President Trump's visit, demand may increase even more. We'll tell you one specific reason when Ag Day continues.
Ag Day, brought to you by the Enlist Weed Control System. More weed control, less drift and volatility, maximum yield potential. In the country, brought to you by Kubota. See the all-new Commander Pro zero-turn mower at Kubota.com or visit your local Kubota dealer today.
Well, President Trump's recent visit to Japan is leaving a lasting impression, at least at one hamburger stand in Tokyo. Lines have been forming out the door at Munch's Burger Shack in the Japanese capital since Trump ate one of their burgers with the Japanese prime minister. The president's tough talk on issues like bilateral trade and security tend to get a mixed response in Japan, which sees the U.S. as its most important alliance partner. But his love for the Japanese version of the all-American burger is striking a chord with many in Tokyo. Interest in so-called premium burgers is growing, even though they are more expensive than the fast food versions. The President Trump set includes a burger, a serving of coleslaw, and a side of fries. It sells for $12. Sounds like a good meal to me. Well, that's all the time we have this morning. We're so glad you tuned in. For all of us at AgDay, I'm Tyne Morgan. Have a great day in farm country.
AgDay, brought to you by Ram Commercial, America's longest lasting heavy-duty pickups.